Here are some tips and thoughts on finding data from the data librarian Michelle Hazlett at UNC Chapel Hill. When you're trying to find data, the first thing you need to think about is who would be interested in this kind of data? Who would be interested enough to pay to collect it? The biggest producers in the world are the government. Think international, like the United Nations, national, especially the US government, state, regional, like the councils of government in North Carolina cover several counties, and local government. Special interest organizations like trade groups or professional associations have interests in their own areas, which sometimes can be very narrow but very deep. Likewise, non-governmental organizations and academic researchers. Remember, with in academia, there are a lot of repositories where researchers can deposit their data, like the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research or the Roper Center for Opinion Poll Data. You'll want to ask yourself, who would want to know the answer to whatever your question is? Don't forget to think about the purpose for which it might have been collected. For example, the Economic Census collects data about business and employees, but because they're mainly interested in economic performance of the US, you won't find anything in the Economic Census about people who work 2 or more jobs. That's more of a social issue with economic overtones. Beware that special interest groups may have a vested interest in a particular slant on the data. So there's some questions to ask when you have trouble finding exactly what you want. So first, what data is critical to your research? Can you change your research question, how it's phrased? Can you accept a different time period, like annual data instead of monthly data? If you're doing a time series analysis, that won't work, but maybe you can change the variable that you're trying to track. And this goes back to the question of who would be interested in the answer to your question. For example, someone was looking for recreational boating statistics. The North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources does not even track boating statistics at state parks that have boat ramps, but we learned that hydroelectric dams have to be licensed every few years by the US Department of Energy. As part of the license renewal process, the dams have to quantify recreational uses of their reservoirs, so they're likely to collect boating statistics. It's not going to be everything, but it can be good enough. Whenever you run into a new data set, be prepared to sit down and read the technical documentation. This is what tells you how the questions were asked, how the sample was selected, what methodologies were employed for creating estimates, how to evaluate the margins of error, and lots of other vital information for using the data correctly. Commuting statistics and census data provide a great example of how knowing the question wording is critical to understanding the resulting data. When you look at the data, you'll find statistics on people who commuted to foreign countries or between North Carolina and Indiana. No, it's not necessarily that they actually commuted between those places every day or every week. It's simply that the Census Bureau asks the question, where did you work last week? Those oddball answers now make more sense. Agency publications can also provide a lot of useful interpretation. For instance, Census Bureau presentations and articles are good resources for how to use and not to use American Community Survey data that have large margins of error, and there are an assortment of guides for specialized data users, like people focusing on rural areas. Think about the limitations of the data. What do you not find within them? How does the way they were collected affect what conclusions you can draw from them? Also, correlation does not equal causation. What other factors might explain the correlation? Data on sensitive issues are almost always slanted. People don't want to report rape or illiteracy. Think how data might be under or overcounted. Also, many data are never publicly released to protect the confidentiality of respondents, or a researcher must apply to access the data, but the application process can take a long time, so this will affect what data you can access. If you have questions about finding data for your thesis project, you can always email Nancy or schedule a meeting to talk about it.